Hi, Mick McQuaid here with some notes on the pet owners exercise. First of all, the specification file for this has some problems. I fixed some of those problems and put a new one on my courses. So if your version of the file says people here instead of person in these places, you have the old version and you should get a new version from my courses. The second thing I want to talk about is the actual solution files. So there are 4 solution files on my courses now: petowners.dtd, petownersxml.dtd, .xml, petowners two-way, petowners two-way.dtd, and petowners two-way.xml. So I want to say a little bit about these 4 files. And this is the first one I want to talk about. This is the complete stuff that you need to have a valid petowners.dtd file. Yours certainly doesn't have to look exactly like this, but this is the minimal amount of stuff that you need. Now, during class, we put other junk in here to try to make it validate in Oxygen, in the Oxygen XML editor. And that was not necessary, and it was never going to work because Oxygen is expecting an XML document, not a DTD. So there are a number of ways that we can solve this problem of not being able to use Oxygen directly on this file. Some people suggested turning this into a complete XML document so that it would validate. That's not my preferred solution. Another solution that you could do would be to actually write a validating parser, which has been very conveniently done for you, or the material needed has been done for you. So there's a library called libxml2 that is the widely used source for parsing XML, and in that library there is a function called XML parse DTD, and you can use this to parse any document type definition and find errors with respect to the W3 recommendation for what a document type definition should look at. If you're not a C programmer, though, actually doing this probably doesn't seem very appealing. Instead, you might like to find some sort of wrapper where someone else has done this, and I found actually surprisingly few. So here's a resource called Validome, validome.org, and I think this is actually, let me just see, yeah, Grammar Validate is the full URL here. And I took the DTD from the tutorial that you did, and I just took this part because this is all that's actually necessary for the DTD. I put it in here, I pasted it in here, and I clicked on this. Neither of these are clicked by default. These are both unchecked by default when you visit this page. So I clicked on this, and then I pressed the validate button, and this message came up: the document is valid. And it's just a series of element statements, but it is valid. My guess would be that this is implemented using the using this function right here. Now, there have in the past been some other websites that allow this kind of interactive DTD stuff. I didn't happen to find any now. They may still exist. Another solution, though, if you are an Eclipse user, Eclipse is an integrated development environment for Java, and many of you have learned Java, so you may be using Eclipse. Eclipse has an interactive document type definition validator. Presumably, that is also based on this same function, and it will give you the same result as the Validome validator. So I do not recommend any of these solutions, though. What is the solution that I recommend? It is to not validate directly at all. Instead, to validate an XML file with a validator that also validates the DTD fed to it. So you have this XML file that refers back to this DTD, and if you pass it through a parser like the one that I demonstrated in class, XML-lint, and here's an example of doing that. Oops, no, here's an example of doing that. you get no error. So the fact that there was no output here signified that it worked. You can take a look at the XML lint man page to find out what these options mean, to get a description of each of them. But basically no out means that we don't want any output except for error messages. If I remove that, I'll get the full validated XML file. But that's not really what I want. What I want is just to know if there are any error messages. And in this case, I've also said that I want to validate it against this document type definition, the petowners.dtd file. And what XML lint will do is validate this first. And the way that I can verify this is to put an error in here and see what XML lint does. So here's what happens if everything's just dandy. And then if I go into petowners.dtd and let's say I change this. Now I happen to be using a syntax highlighting editor, Vim here, which is aware that I'm editing a document type definition. So Vim is going to highlight anything I do wrong anyway. So I'm probably not going to get to that point because I get that visual indication. But suppose that I were not using that. Suppose that I were using Notepad, as so many people did in class on the first day, and I get no indication at all. So here's what happens. I see that there is a content error in the external subset. The external subset is this petowners.dtd. And the error points to the beginning of the place where this occurs, where the error message occurs on line 9. In fact, if I go back here, I think I will see that, yeah, this is line 9 of this file. So let me just fix that and do it again. Now there is one problem. Okay, so it's fine now. Now there is one problem with doing it this way, and that is that you have to have a complete XML file before you can validate the DTD. That doesn't seem like a lot of fun. I would like to have a minimal file. So that's in fact what I've done here. I've written in a minimal XML file. This is the smallest XML file that should validate according to my document type definition. And I did it here before, so I have this somewhere in my command history. There it is. And of course it validates. When I say that it's the minimum, I mean if I were to take this out, for example, it would not validate. And it says that the element pet owner's content does not follow the DTD, expecting people, dogs, and cats, and instead got dogs and cats. And I'm just going to fix this now before I go back to the DTD. And some of you put a plus sign here instead of an asterisk in these 3 locations. And by putting a plus sign here, you stipulated that you needed at least one person element inside of the people element. And so consequently, this would not work. If I put the plus signs here, this would actually be too minimal. In fact, let me go back and just do that just to demonstrate what you see if you make that mistake. I'm just going to put pluses here, here, and here. And then I'm going to try to validate that minimal DTD. And there's a validity error because we're expecting at least one person and we got nothing. And we're expecting at least one dog and we got nothing. So let me just fix that. Okay, now in addition to those these files, and by the way, some of this stuff isn't necessarily like the specification, the homework specification or the exercise specification, whatever you want to call it, just specifies character data, but we definitely prefer parse character data unless we have something that the real issue with character data would be, let's suppose that we had a dog named XML. We don't want to parse that because we'll get an error message. Hopefully you don't have a dog named XML, by the way. Another thing is that I've actually inherited this from the creator of the course, Ed Holden, and for some reason he put implied in here, and I would put required, but this is fine. Maybe this just demonstrates another way to do it. Okay, so that's really all that I want to say about this file. And there's really nothing much to say about this file. The Pet Owners two-way is actually just an extension of this, and so there's nothing really special about this, and I don't know. I didn't really see people make, I mean, most of the mistakes that I saw people making were spelling mistakes. So that's really all I've got to say about this. Take a look at this, compare this to what you did. I wouldn't just cut and paste this into your file. I would simply minimally change your file to correct errors and use this as a guideline to help you do that. You'll end up much better able to get through tests and ad hoc situations like that than if you simply copy this and try to read it. All right, thanks for your attention here. That's all for now.